My wife begged me not to invest our savings in the stock market. It's too risky, she said. We'll lose everything. I ignored her advice and turned $600,000 into $3 million in 18 months. She was furious, but not for the reason you think. What I found on her phone that night made me realize why she really didn't want me to get rich. Some betrayals cut deeper than others, and this one would cost her everything she thought she was entitled to. My name is Robert Henderson, but everyone calls me Rob. I'm 46 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I built a cybersecurity company from scratch, protecting other people's digital lives while my own real life was being hacked by the person I trusted most. The irony isn't lost on me. I met Joanna 15 years ago at a tech conference in Austin. She was working for a marketing firm, handling their digital campaigns, and I was just starting to make a name for myself in cybersecurity. She had this laugh that could fill a room, and when she smiled at my terrible jokes about firewalls, I knew I was done for. We hit off immediately. "So you're the guy who keeps hackers out of people's computers," Joanna said during our first conversation, stirring her coffee with genuine interest. "Something like that," I replied, trying not to sound too nerdy. "I protect what matters most to people: their data, their privacy, their digital lives." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually really important work. Most people don't realize how vulnerable they are." That conversation lasted 3 hours. By the end of it, I was already planning our second date. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony in her hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. Joanna was 37 then, mature enough to understand that building something real takes time and patience. She supported my business dreams, even when it meant eating ramen for months while I invested every penny back into the company. Those early years were tough but good. Really good. We were a team, building something together. When contracts started rolling in and the business took off, Joanna was right there celebrating every milestone. She helped me pick out our first real office space, decorated it with plants and motivational posters that made me roll my eyes but secretly love. "This is just the beginning, Rob," she told me as we stood in our empty office space, boxes scattered everywhere. "You're going to change how people think about digital security." She believed in me when I barely believed in myself. That's what made everything that came later so devastating. The company grew faster than I'd ever imagined. Cybersecurity became a hot topic as data breaches made headlines weekly. My team and I were good at what we did. Really good. We specialized in protecting mid-sized businesses from increasingly sophisticated threats, and word spread quickly in the industry. By our 10th wedding anniversary, we were living in a 6-bedroom house in one of Charlotte's most exclusive neighborhoods. Joanna had quit her marketing job to focus on supporting the business, which mostly meant managing our investments and handling the financial side of our growing wealth. That was my first mistake, trusting her completely with our money. She was smart with numbers, I'll give her that, but I should have paid more attention to where every dollar was going. The investment opportunity that changed everything came from an unlikely source: my 16-year-old stepson Marcus. He'd been living with us for 3 years after his father decided parenting was too much work and moved to California. Marcus was a tech-savvy kid who spent his free time analyzing stock market trends and cryptocurrency movements. "Rob, you need to look at these cybersecurity stocks," Marcus said one evening in early 2020, showing me his laptop screen covered with charts and graphs. "With everyone working from home now, companies are going to need serious digital protection." I looked at his analysis, expecting typical teenage enthusiasm. Instead, I found detailed research on 3 specific companies that were positioned to dominate the enterprise cybersecurity market. The kid had done his homework. "This is actually pretty solid research, Marcus," I admitted, scrolling through his notes. "Where did you learn to analyze stocks like this?" "YouTube University," he grinned. "Plus some online courses. I've been paper trading for 2 years, and I'm up 38% this year." Joanna walked into the room, carrying her evening tea. "What are you two plotting now?" she asked with a smile. "Marcus thinks we should invest in cybersecurity stocks," I explained. "His analysis is surprisingly thorough." Joanna's expression shifted immediately. "Rob, we talked about this. The stock market is basically gambling. We have enough money in our savings accounts and CDs. Why risk it on some teenager's hunches?" "It's not a hunch, Joanna," Marcus protested. Look at the data. Remote work is permanent now, and companies are getting hacked left and right. They need solutions. Joanna shook her head firmly. We're not risking our security on market speculation. We've worked too hard to gamble it away. This became a recurring argument over the next few weeks. Every time I brought up the investment idea, Joanna shut it down. She'd list all the reasons we shouldn't risk our money, all the ways it could go wrong, all the security we'd lose if the market turned against us. Rob, listen to me, she said during one particularly heated discussion. We have $800,000 in savings, plus the business equity. Why would we risk that on something as unpredictable as the stock market? Because sometimes you have to take calculated risks to build real wealth, I replied. This isn't gambling, Joanna. I understand this industry better than almost anyone. Understanding the technology doesn't mean understanding the stock market, she countered. Please, just promise me you won't do anything reckless with our money. I promised her I'd think about it more. But late at night, I kept returning to Marcus's research and my own industry knowledge. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Cybersecurity was about to explode. Against Joanna's wishes, I made the decision that would prove to be both my greatest financial victory and the beginning of the end of my marriage. I invested $600,000 of our savings into carefully selected cybersecurity stocks in March 2020, right after the market had bottomed out. Within 18 months, our investment had grown to over $3 million. I was right, Marcus was right, and Joanna had been completely wrong. When I showed Joanna our investment portfolio in December 2021, her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of celebration, I saw something darker flash across her face before she managed to smile. $3 million, she repeated, staring at the laptop screen. Rob, this is incredible. I can't believe you were right about this. We were right, I corrected, though we both knew she'd fought me every step of the way. This changes everything for our future. Marcus was ecstatic when I told him. Rob, we're millionaires now. This is insane, he shouted, doing some kind of victory dance in the living room. But Joanna's response bothered me. Within a week, she'd started talking about the investment, as if it had been her idea all along. I told my sister about our smart investment strategy. She mentioned casually over dinner. She's so impressed with how we've built our wealth together. Our strategy? I questioned. Joanna, you tried to talk me out of this for months. I was just being cautious, she said defensively. But I always supported your final decision. That was the first lie I caught her in, though I didn't realize it was just the beginning. As our wealth grew, so did the distance between us. Joanna became obsessed with lifestyle upgrades, a bigger house, luxury cars, expensive vacations. She started spending more time away from home, claiming she was researching investment properties or meeting with financial advisors. I'm building our portfolio, she'd say when I questioned her absences. Someone needs to manage all this new wealth properly. The irony was painful. The woman who'd opposed taking any financial risks was now acting like she was our family's investment genius. Marcus noticed it too. Rob, something's weird about how Joanna talks about the money now, he said one evening while we were working on his college applications. She acts like she made all the investment decisions. People sometimes rewrite history to make themselves feel better, I told him, though his observation troubled me more than I admitted. By early 2022, Joanna was gone most evenings and weekends. When I asked where she'd been, her answers became increasingly vague. I was looking at properties in the Myers Park area, she'd say, or meeting with our accountant about tax strategies. I trusted her completely, which was my biggest mistake. I thought our financial success had given her new confidence and purpose. I had no idea she was using our wealth to fund a completely different kind of investment in someone else. The first real warning sign came in March 2022, during what should have been the happiest time of our lives. Our investment portfolio had grown to over $3.5 million, and my cybersecurity company was landing bigger contracts than ever before. Rob, I think we should separate our finances, Joanna announced one evening, completely out of nowhere. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing client proposals. What do you mean, separate our finances? Well, we have significant assets now, she said, not meeting my eyes. It might be smart to diversify how we hold our wealth. You know, for tax purposes. Joanna, we're married. Our finances are already combined. What's this really about? She sighed dramatically. It's about being smart with money, Rob. Maybe you should focus on the technical side of things and let me handle the financial strategy. The audacity of that statement hit me like a slap. This was the same woman who'd begged me not to invest in the stocks that made us wealthy. Let me get this straight, I said, closing my laptop and giving her my full attention. You want to take control of the money you told me not to invest in the first place. That's not fair, Joanna protested. I was cautious, yes, but I also supported your decision once you made it. No, you didn't. You fought me for weeks. Marcus had to help convince you it was a good idea. Her face flushed red. Marcus is a child, Rob. This is between us. That's when I noticed how she'd been dressing differently lately. Expensive clothes I didn't remember buying, new jewelry, perfect makeup, even for casual outings. When I asked about it, she said she wanted to look the part of a successful investor. Marcus pulled me aside a few days later. Rob, I need to tell you something. I saw Joanna at that new expensive restaurant downtown yesterday, and she wasn't alone. My blood went cold. What do you mean? She was having lunch with some guy. They looked close. Like really close. Marcus, are you sure it wasn't a business meeting? He shook his head. Business meetings don't usually involve holding hands across the table. I wanted to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but Marcus wasn't the type to make things up. That night, I started paying closer attention to Joanna's behavior, and what I saw made my stomach turn. She was constantly texting someone, always angling her phone away from me. She'd leave the room to take calls, claiming they were about investment opportunities. She'd come home from her supposed financial meetings looking flushed and happy in a way that had nothing to do with money. When I tried to initiate physical intimacy, she'd make excuses about being tired or stressed about our financial responsibilities. I have a lot on my mind with managing our portfolio, she'd say, turning away from me in bed. The portfolio she'd try to prevent me from creating in the first place. What I found on Joanna's phone that night shattered my world into a million pieces. As someone who specialized in digital security, I knew exactly how to access her encrypted messages and deleted files. The irony was bitter. I was using my professional skills to uncover the destruction of my personal life. The photos hit me first. Joanna and my business partner David Chun, laughing together at some expensive restaurant I'd never taken her to. David's hand on her thigh under the table. Another photo of them in what looked like a hotel room, her wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. Jesus Christ, I whispered, sitting alone in my home office at 2 a.m. The text messages were even worse. Months of conversations, planning secret meetings, talking about their future together. David writing things like, "Can't wait to hold you again," and "Rob has no idea how lucky he is, but soon you'll be mine." Joanna's responses made my stomach turn. He's so focused on his precious cybersecurity company, he doesn't even notice I'm gone half the time. The money from his investments will make leaving him so much easier. They've been planning this for at least 6 months. David was helping her figure out how to maximize her share of our assets in a divorce. He'd even connected her with a lawyer who specialized in protecting wise financial interests in high-asset divorces. But the most devastating message was from just 3 days ago. I'm done pretending to love him. After we get through the holidays, I'm filing for divorce. You and I can finally be together openly, and with his money, we can start our own company. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more evidence. David had been embezzling from our company to fund their affair. Expensive hotels, jewelry, trips to locations where Joanna claimed she was attending financial seminars. The worst part was realizing how long I've been blind to it. David had access to our company accounts. He knew exactly how much our investments were worth. He'd been positioning himself to steal my wife and my money simultaneously. I spent the rest of the night copying every piece of evidence to a secure drive. Screenshots, financial records, everything. If Joanna wanted to play games with our money, she was about to learn that her husband was very, very good at digital forensics. When she woke up the next morning, acting like nothing had happened, I almost lost my composure. She made coffee, kissed my cheek, and asked about my plans for the day, as if she hadn't spent the previous evening planning my financial destruction. "I'm meeting with David this afternoon to discuss the quarterly reports," I said, watching her face carefully. "Oh, that's nice," she replied without missing a beat. "Tell him I said hello." The casual betrayal in her voice was staggering. This woman was a better actor than I'd ever imagined. The meeting with David that afternoon was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done. I sat across from my business partner of 8 years, knowing he'd been stealing from me and sleeping with my wife, while pretending everything was normal. The Q3 numbers look fantastic, Rob, David said, sliding financial reports across the conference table. Our cybersecurity division is up 43% from last year. That's great news, I replied, studying his face. And how are things with your personal life, David? Anyone special you're seeing? His slight hesitation told me everything. Nothing serious. You know me. I'm married to the job. Lying bastard. Actually, David, I want to discuss something sensitive with you, I said, pulling out my laptop. I've discovered some concerning financial irregularities in our company accounts. His face went pale. What kind of irregularities? Unauthorized transfers, expense reports for hotels and restaurants that don't match any business activities, credit card charges that seem more personal than professional. David's hand started to shake slightly. Rob, I can explain all of that. Sometimes business entertainment happens outside normal channels. Business entertainment? I repeated, opening the folder of screenshots on my laptop. Is that what you call sleeping with my wife? The color drained completely from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rob, listen to me, David started. No, you listen to me. I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. I have months of evidence. Text messages, photos, financial records showing you've been embezzling company funds to pay for your affair with Joanna. I have everything. David slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. How long have you known? Long enough to document everything properly. Long enough to build a case that will destroy you both. Rob, please let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It wasn't supposed to happen at all, I said, standing up. You were my partner, David. I trusted you with my business and my family. I know, and I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. And now you're both going to face the consequences. I packed up my laptop and headed for the door. Consider this your official notice, David. You're out of the company, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. And David, he looked up at me with desperate eyes. If you contact my wife again, if you try to warn her about this conversation, if you do anything except disappear from our lives, I will make sure every cybersecurity company in the country knows exactly what kind of person you are. Your career will be over. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. For the first time since discovering the affair, I was the one making the moves instead of reacting to theirs. Now it was time to go home and have a very different conversation with my wife. Walking into my house that evening, knowing what I knew, felt like entering a battlefield where only one side knew the war had started. Joanna was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as if she hadn't spent the day coordinating my financial destruction with her lover. How was your meeting with David? She asked without looking up from chopping vegetables. Enlightening, I replied, setting my briefcase down carefully. Joanna, we need to talk. She glanced at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, a wariness that hadn't been there before. About what? About your affair with David. About the money you're planning to steal. About the lies you've been telling for months. The knife in her hand stopped moving. For a moment, the only sound was the refrigerator humming in the corner. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots. Do you want to keep lying? Or should we discuss these text messages where you call me clueless and plan your new life with my business partner? Joanna's face went white, then red, then settled into something I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. How did you get those messages? She demanded. Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do now that you've been caught? She set the knife down and turned to face me fully. Rob, this isn't what you think it is. It's exactly what I think it is. You've been having an affair with David, planning to divorce me, and scheming to take half of the money you tried to stop me from investing in the first place. That money belongs to both of us, she said, her voice gaining strength. We're married. What's yours is mine. The audacity was breathtaking. What's mine is yours. Joanna, you fought against every financial decision that made us wealthy. You wanted me to keep our money in savings accounts earning 2% interest. I was being responsible, she shot back. Just because you got lucky with some risky investments doesn't mean. Lucky? I interrupted. I spent months researching those investments. Marcus helped with analysis. You did everything possible to prevent it from happening. Well, it happened, and now I'm entitled to half of everything. There it was, the truth finally spoken aloud. No apologies for the affair, no remorse for the betrayal. Just cold, calculated greed. You're entitled to nothing, I said quietly. North Carolina allows me to sue your lover for alienation of affection. Your affair just costs you any claim to being the innocent party in this divorce. For the first time, Joanna looked genuinely worried. You can't prove anything. I held up my phone again. I can prove everything. Months of evidence, financial records showing David embezzled company funds to pay for your affair, documentation of every lie you've told. You violated my privacy by reading my messages, she said desperately. You violated our marriage by sleeping with my business partner, I replied. Privacy rights don't apply when you're committing adultery and planning financial fraud. Marcus appeared in the doorway, drawn by our raised voices. He took one look at the situation and asked, should I pack a bag? Yes, I told him. We're leaving tonight. Joanna's mask finally slipped completely. You can't take Marcus. I've been his mother for 3 years. You've been planning to abandon him for 6 months, I said. He's coming with me. As we walked toward the stairs, I turned back to her. Joanna, you had an affair, and now I'm leaving without any warning or goodbye. Enjoy explaining this mess to your lawyer. The next morning, I sat in my attorney's office with Marcus beside me, laying out months of evidence against Joanna and David. My lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, had been handling business contracts for years, but family law was her specialty. Rob, this is comprehensive documentation, Sarah said, reviewing the printed messages and financial records. In North Carolina, alienation of affection cases are difficult to win, but you have extraordinary evidence here. What about the divorce itself? I asked. With proof of adultery, Joanna's claim to equitable distribution becomes much weaker. The court won't look favorably on a spouse who cheated and whose lover embezzled marital assets. Marcus shifted in his chair. What happens to me in all this? Sarah smiled at him kindly. Since Rob has been your legal guardian for 3 years and Joanna was involved in an affair that destabilized the household, the court will likely maintain the current custody arrangement. Good, Marcus said firmly. I want to stay with Rob. By afternoon, we'd filed for divorce and initiated the alienation of affection lawsuit against David. The papers were served simultaneously, Joanna at our house, David at his apartment. Joanna's response was immediate and furious. She called my phone 14 times before I finally answered. Rob, you have to stop this madness, she pleaded. We can work this out privately. There's nothing to work out, Joanna. You made your choices. I'll drop all claims to the investment money if you drop the lawsuit against David. Too late for negotiations. You should have thought about consequences before you started planning my destruction. Please, Rob. David could lose everything. His career, his reputation, his financial security. He should have considered that before stealing from my company and sleeping with my wife. The phone went quiet for a moment. You're destroying 2 people's lives over a mistake. I'm protecting my assets from thieves and liars. There's a difference. David tried a different approach, showing up at my temporary apartment that evening. Marcus answered the door and immediately called for me. Rob, please, can we talk like men? David said when I appeared. Men don't steal from their business partners and sleep with their wives, I replied, not inviting him inside. I know I made mistakes, but Joanna seduced me. She pursued me, not the other way around. So now you're blaming her? That's your defense. I'm trying to explain that this wasn't some calculated plan to hurt you. David, you embezzled company funds to pay for hotel rooms where you had sex with my wife. That sounds pretty calculated to me. The money, I can pay it back. You'll pay it back through the lawsuit and criminal charges I'm filing tomorrow. His face went pale. Criminal charges. Embezzlement is a felony, David. You're not just losing your job. You're probably going to prison. Watching him drive away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Justice. These people had tried to destroy my life while I was trusting them completely. Now, they were going to face the full consequences of their actions. Marcus patted my shoulder. You did the right thing, Rob. I know, son. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always necessary. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom watching my former life get dissected by lawyers and judges. The divorce proceedings had been brutal, but the evidence was overwhelming. Joanna's attorney had tried every angle to discredit my documentation, but digital evidence doesn't lie. Your Honor, my attorney Sarah said during closing arguments, Mrs. Henderson actively discouraged the investments that created the marital wealth, then engaged in adultery while planning to claim half of assets she opposed creating. Judge Patricia Williams reviewed the evidence methodically. The text messages, financial records, and testimony from Marcus painted a clear picture of deception and greed. Mr. Henderson, the judge said, the court finds that your wife's adultery and your business partner's embezzlement constitute grounds for unequal property distribution. Joanna's face went pale as the judge continued. Mrs. Henderson will receive 25% of marital assets, minus legal fees and restitution for embezzled funds. Mr. Henderson retains primary custody of Marcus Henderson and full ownership of Henderson Cybersecurity Solutions. David's criminal trial had concluded 2 weeks earlier. Embezzlement charges resulted in 18 months in federal prison and full restitution of stolen funds. His cybersecurity career was finished. No company would hire someone with a felony record involving financial fraud. The alienation of affection lawsuit was settled out of court. David's remaining assets went toward a 6-figure settlement that essentially bankrupted him. Rob, I'm sorry this happened to you, Joanna said as we left the courthouse. I never meant for things to go this far. You meant every bit of it, I replied calmly. You just didn't expect to get caught. Marcus, now 17 and headed to college in the fall, put his hand on my shoulder. Ready to go home, Rob? Yes, son. Let's go home. Walking to my car, I reflected on the cost of trust and the price of betrayal. Joanna ended up with roughly $800,000, less than our original savings before my investments. David lost everything, his career, his freedom, and his financial security. But I'd learned something valuable. Success attracts people who want to take credit for your work and steal the rewards of your risks. The next time I trusted someone with my heart or my money, I'd be much more careful about who deserved that trust. My cybersecurity company was thriving without David's interference. Marcus was thriving without Joanna's manipulation. We'd built something real together, a family based on honesty, hard work, and mutual respect. The investment portfolio that started this whole mess was now worth over $4 million. Every quarter, when the statements arrived, I remembered the woman who tried to stop me from taking the risks that secured our future. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being right. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, watching Marcus pack for his sophomore year at NC State. He'd chosen computer science with a focus on cybersecurity, following in my footsteps, but building his own path. Rob, I want you to know something, Marcus said, folding his last shirt into the suitcase. You saved my life by fighting for custody. If I'd gone with Joanna, I would have grown up thinking that lying and cheating were acceptable. You were already a good kid. Marcus, I just gave you a stable place to stay good. No, you gave me more than that. You showed me what integrity looks like when everything's falling apart. He was right, though I hadn't thought about it that way. The divorce had forced me to choose between taking the easy path, accepting Joanna's betrayal quietly, and fighting for what was right. I'd chosen to fight, and that choice had shaped both our lives. My dating life remained non-existent by choice. A few women had shown interest, particularly after word spread about my successful business and investment portfolio. But I'd learned to be suspicious of anyone attracted to my financial success rather than my character. Any chance you'll start dating again? Marcus asked, echoing conversations we'd had before. Maybe someday, I replied. But if I ever get married again, there's going to be a prenuptial agreement that protects everything I've built. Smart man, Marcus said with a grin. Trust, but verify, right? Exactly. Your generation understands that better than mine did. The business continued growing beyond my wildest expectations. Without David's embezzlement and Joanna's emotional drain, I could focus entirely on building something lasting. We'd expanded to 5 states and employed over 60 people. The investment portfolio had grown to nearly $6 million. Every quarterly statement reminded me that trusting my own judgment, despite opposition from people who claimed to love me, had been the right choice. Joanna had moved to Florida with Alex, using her divorce settlement to fund their Costa Rica resort project. According to mutual friends, the business failed within 18 months. Alex disappeared with the remaining money, leaving her broke and alone in a foreign country. I felt no satisfaction in her misfortune, just gratitude that I'd escaped before she could destroy more of my life. "Rob," Marcus said as we loaded his car, "thank you for teaching me that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need to watch most carefully." "I hope you never need to use that lesson," I told him. "But if you do, you'll be ready." Watching him drive away to start his adult life, I realized that losing a cheating wife and a thieving business partner had been the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to discover what you actually need. What I needed was honesty, loyalty, and people who celebrated my success instead of trying to steal it. Now I had exactly that.